Good evening, everyone. My name is Connor Shearer. I'm the Building Safety Manager at Live Group. Some of you will know me, some of you may not. I also oversee the team that manages lead stock. So I'm in charge of day-to-day operations on site, which Salle is obviously part of that lead stock estate. And I also oversee the cladding projects at Live as a whole, building a building safety team that are working on these projects. So thank you, first of all, for joining us tonight. I appreciate that it takes some time out of your schedules for this update. And to start with, just to give you a bit of a few frequently asked questions. The session's recorded, so it'll be visible on our website. We're also going to send it out in the newsletter by next week, so there's no need to record. Everything will be there for you to watch back as and when you choose to watch it back. We like doing these sessions, and the newsletters. I understand that the information sometimes can be a bit repetitive, that you don't feel like you're getting the full picture, and that's why I like the opportunity to be able to speak to you and be able to put it into my own words, the situation on site and in these projects. So I do appreciate time for joining, and that these sessions will continue. We don't have one planned as of yet, but as we go through the timeline that we're going to show you later on, it will give you the opportunity. If you want to ask a question, email into building safety at Live Group. Start your subject line with the word LaSalle at the end. We're going to go through as many questions as possible. The session's intended to only last 30 to 40 minutes. We have put a full hour aside just in case, but the intention is that it won't be a large update in which we're sat for an hour going through the different areas. There's not that many slides, and hopefully a lot of it will be more actually answering the questions that I know you guys have got. So we'll make a start on that. So what I wanted to start with was explaining how we plan to set up on site with these projects, because this will affect yourself as an owner-occupier, or it may affect your tenants or your residents within that rent your premises. So in terms of the actual site, at the front of the building, as you can see down here, there will be a road closure, and this area will be used for storage as well as deliveries to site. On the actual building itself, right round, there will be scaffold towers with hoists in various positions. These actual towers will be kind of like a tunnel, so you'll be able to get under them at all times. Access to the building will be maintained as it is at the moment, and there'll be no restrictions on the emergency exits or the entrance or exits to the commercial units. This is all, as we would say, this is all where we're up to based on verbal discussions. What you've got to remember is we have a lot of these verbal discussions, and now the solicitors are aware, kind of finalising this up, getting it into a contract with Allied London, who own the estate, as well as working with obviously Leeds City Council and Highways who own the front of the front land at the building. So yeah, that's kind of a bit of a localized setup. Disabled and wheelchair access will be maintained at all times. Scaffold will be built up in certain areas. There will be some towpath closures around the back of the building. And yes, sorry, apologies. As always with working from home, my dog's decided now would be the time that he wants to make a nuisance of himself. Yes, so that's pretty much your localized site setup. There'll be a material drop off. All the materials we use on site per day will be delivered to site that day, so we won't be using any localized storage to the building, and this is because of the fact that the estate team don't want us using localized storage. So in terms of how it will look as a wider estate, we thought we'd share this with you just so you understand. This obviously looks at our buildings on lead stock, which is Mackenzie, LaSalle and Cartier. I can't comment on Magellan and Franklin House. They've obviously got their own operational plan, but given the level of discussion that we've had with Allied London, I would anticipate that they're going to come under the same restrictions as ourselves on a lot of these. So there is some localised welfare areas. Now, these are going to be small, discreet, and hopefully not too recognisable or be used for very long. We've chosen to rent a management office over near the Tesco Express. The reason being that the estate team didn't want us to have porter cabins on site. So we had to look at what we could do with that. And at the time, there was a unit available there. So we've chosen that the best option for us will be to rent that unit throughout the duration of the works. At the front of Cartier House, there's the big square. We've been working with Royal Armouries very closely on this area. The thoughts at the minute is that it will be used as, there'll be some facility for some storage there at the front. However, what will happen is as there is events or there is weddings and all the various stuff that the Royal Armouries host, as well as the Leeds Stock Estate team, what they'll do is we'll have to move that away and fetch it back and so forth. So I hope that gives some background into how we're going to set up on site. There's not too much complexness there. In terms of where you've got the road closure at the front of Salle, you're probably going to have the same at Mackenzie as well. So it'll be quite a congested area. We've been speaking with the local school opposite to let them know of our plans. We're keeping them updated, and they're going to try and work around us. We're obviously going to work around them as well with our delivery times and so forth. So on a very basic overview, I'm going to go into a bit of detail very shortly about why we're not able to give specific dates on this. Effectively, we're in the position to submit stage 2. As soon as we submit stage 2, there's probably going to be about an 8-week period where we go through 4 weeks of that approval, where we get the clarification on the amount that we're going to receive, and we're able to then start to execute contracts, get them notice of intents out, and actually start to look to mobilise and get ourselves on site. The actual project itself is expected to last around 53 weeks. So that'll be 53 weeks of the contractor on site working away on the building. And then after that, there's around a 2-week period for snagging and sign off, and around a 2-week after that, where we'll have an EWS1 form issued on the building. So as I say, it's a very basic and broad overview. It's not meant to be too complex. Once we have the facility to provide the actual dates, we're intending to do so. And I'll go into a little bit of detail as to why we can't provide that on the next slide. So in terms of the Building Safety Fund itself, this is where we're up to. We obviously completed the pre-application, which was the technical eligibility. We then completed the first stage, full application, followed very quickly by completing the second stage application, which is now where we're up to. So we've got our tendered costs. We've split them based on our cost assessor and his report into eligible and non-eligible works. We've provided that up, and we're going to go into a little bit of detail in a moment to explain exactly how that works out. So the next step would be to submit that and get that funding decision, enter that grant funding agreement, and actually get to site. So to give a little bit of background into what we actually put into that stage 2 application, I just want to share with you this, which is a kind of a screen grab from the portal itself. So this is from LaSalle's submission. So we've completed that scope of works. We provided the plans, the architect's new design and so forth. And we've been able to provide that to the first stage of the portal, and that's been submitted. On the back of that, we've also completed the statutory approvals, the license to alter, which is what we went in for, as opposed to a full-blown planning application. That was approved today, so we've been able to provide that, and building controllers provided sign-off on our plans as we see them. The next area we had to provide information on is the procurement. Now this is effectively how we went to tender, why we chose that methodology of going to tender. As you recall, we did a stage 1 tender where we invited several parties to provide quotes based on the initial estimates, and then we entered into direct negotiations with the party that was best fit for the project based on pricing. We provide that all up into a tender report. We provided stage 1 and stage 2 tender report, and then we provide that to the ministry. As well as that, we also have to provide cost recovery, and that means anyone that potentially we could go after for the remediation cost of the building. The solicitors have been appointed to review that and have provided a document that we've provided. to the ministry. Further, on top of that, we have provided the various bits of information in return in regards to the contractor to make sure that the government can be satisfied we're entering with the correct party. In terms of the contract execution, this is a bit more basic. This is where we just provide the names, the details, and the director of the freeholder who will be signing the grant funding agreement, as well as those that are signing the collateral warranties for the suppliers and contractors that we've been working with that form part of the project team and will also form part of the contractors remediation team. With that in mind, we then provide a project timeline. Now, what we've been doing is we've been submitting this every month, but as every month has gone past, we've rolled it back a month at a time, because as we say, a lot of this is dependent on getting the application submitted. So once we actually get to a position where we submit that and we revise that project timeline, we're going to share that with you guys with the actual dates, so that you'll be able to see the key milestones. You'll be able to track yourselves where we're up to, and we'll be able to provide updates on that to let you know if we're on track, if we're not on track, and so forth. Then we have to provide the project team appointments. So this is the PI insurance of the whole project team and the contractors, director details, and then just also providing an assessment on the contract on the supplier to make sure that they're suitable for the role that they've been given. Finally, there's this additional documents tab. Now, this is the last area that we need to provide information, and at the moment we're unable to do so, and this is what is holding up that final submission for Salle. So the reason we're not able to do so is that Schedule 9 is something that you have to provide in this additional documents tab. With that, you also provide board minutes that confirm that you're going to enter into the grant funding agreement. Now, the freeholder has appointed a set of solicitors who are working with a national group of freeholders and ground rent companies and so forth. That solicitor has advised that the freeholder doesn't sign the Schedule 9 or board minutes at this time, because it is expected that in the coming weeks a revised version of the grant funding agreement will be coming out. And in that revised version, there has been several negotiations with the freeholder that is with the legal teams that the freeholder should know about before they agree to enter that agreement. So that's the hold up. We're not involved in them discussions, unfortunately. I'm not involved in them, Liv are not involved in them, and it is quite a large high-rise risk group of freeholders that are levying them discussions. I believe Armour and so are involved. We're not too involved. We've tried to have some meetings this week to really try and understand it, because obviously from our side as a project team, we equally find it frustrating that we're at the point now where we're ready to go, and it's a Schedule 9 and some board minutes that's holding up actually getting this application in. So that's all I can provide you on that, because as I say, I'm not involved. I don't know the nitty-gritty details of what's going on in them negotiations between this group of freeholders and wider. My understanding is it's almost around half of the applications are affected by this at the moment, as forming part of this group. So it's something to keep an eye on, and we're putting pressure. We understand that there's a question of how long does this go on? Do we just allow negotiations to continue and continue, or do we just eventually hit a point where we've got to get it in? These are all questions that I've asked the freeholder. I'll be asking the freeholder as well to understand, because we want to make sure that they're aware of all the risk here, which does include the fact that the longer this goes on, the harder it's going to be, the more the price increases may occur, and that's very much possible. We're going to go into a bit of pricing on the next slide, and as part of that, we're going to explain how this pricing is for a little bit earlier, and that with the issues in the industry at the moment, there is price rises left, right, and centre. Subcontractors are walking away, new contractors are coming in, but with a higher price, and so forth. So we're going to go into a little bit of detail on that. So then, in terms of the full works and cost declaration, that's just a final signature by myself to say that all the information we've submitted is true and accurate, and so forth. There's nothing in that. It is literally just a signature. So moving on next to the actual financial position, and we wanted to share this information with you as we see it at this time. So this pricing is from the 4th of September. it is actually due to be revised in 3 days' time, and we are expecting an increase of some form due to the current market conditions, as I've explained earlier. So the actual removal of the unsafe ACM cladding is around 597,000. The actual replacement and installation is around 3.9 million. And at the moment, as far as the project team are concerned, based on the criteria, we see no cost as being non-eligible works are required on this building to get that EWS one that everybody wants. Then you've got the prelims and the main contractor costs, and this includes scaffolding, site management costs. It includes where we've talked about where we've got the rental office, the actual welfare facilities. All these costs kind of fall into this main contractor cost and fit that area. And then lastly, you've got the other costs. Now, the other cost looks high. It includes the 20% VAT of all the other costs. It includes a 10% contingency, and it includes the cost of the whole project team as a whole. Now, what we're going to do with these costs is we're going to, these are the headings. We've got lots of subheadings, too many to fit on the screen to be in fact. We're going to provide a detailed breakdown of this, and also on top of that, we're intending to provide you as a leaseholder when we finalise these costings with a copy of the cost assessor's report. Now, the cost assessor has been independently appointed by us. He's an independent organisation from any other party involved. The cost assessor is providing us feedback, so we can be satisfied that the cost we're submitting to the Building Safety Fund is right, is fair, and so forth. And then further on the back of that, MHLGC will appoint their own cost assessor to these projects that will go through that. Now, on this, you'll see we've got the two columns. The first column on the left is the total project cost, and that's how much it's going to cost us as a whole. And then the cost on the right is those costs that are eligible for grant funding. Now, you'll notice there's a small difference of around £40,000 in that. That is because what we did is about a month ago, when we first got these costs on the 4th, we did our work very quickly. We worked very quickly, did me and the project team, and we actually provided these costs to Homes England with all the different subheadings, of course. In that analysis, Homes England took a look and said everything looks fairly what we would expect. And they did, however, highlight one area, which was a cost of £40,000, which was in relation to the upkeep and of the hoardings on site. So what we did is we initially said, right, you know, if that's what you're saying you think is the only sticking point at the minute from Homes England side, then what we'll do is we'll take that out, we'll look at doing it as a variance, and we'll argue our case in the future, because we don't want to waste our time arguing it now. Because we've got a bit of a delay, we are still going back and forth on this around that £40,000, because, you know, realistically we feel it's only fair that, you know, the hoardings are maintained. It's, you know, it's a prestigious area, and it should be branded appropriately, and it is a requirement of the license that we're getting from the estate owners. So as it stands, in terms of our project team and our cost assessor, we feel that there will only be a £40,000 reduction from the cost that we're submitting to the fund of 11.4 million. So we will, of course, provide an update on this. Once we submit it, MHLGC will provide their own cost assessor, and that cost assessor will be the person that dictates what is and isn't eligible in terms of the costings that we've provided and any deductions on that. So I hope that gives some background. We'll also provide you a bit of information on the revised cost once we know it and we finalise it. We've been working with the contractor for about a week and a bit now on these revised costings, because we are expecting an increase of some form due to the way that the industry and the market pull is at the moment. So, as I said, it was only going to be a quick presentation. I know there's been a lot of questions around the pricing and so forth, so I thought it would be best to hit that straight on its head and provide you guys with a bit of a verbal update. It wasn't intended to be a very long session, but what I will do is I'll stop sharing my screen, go onto the email now and start to make my way through some of the questions that you guys have sent. I appreciate that you may need some time to go away and consider some questions. So on that one, if you do, please do email into that email address, and we'll pick them up once the session's ended anyway. There's a question here regarding the original contractor. Regarding what's been looked at that, all I can say is that the freeholders appointed their legal team. That information has been provided to Homes England. It's not an area that I specialise in. Obviously, I don't work for the freeholders legal team, and they've taken that advice of the legal team, provided it. And at the moment, it's not seen that there's an ability to fetch a claim against any of the original parties. But time will tell with that one, especially with the legislation and laws that are changing. I'm sure you've all seen in the news that the government are on about extending stuff and so forth. So we will we'll obviously have to understand that and keep an eye on that as it progresses. In terms of the uneligible cost, one of the questions being is if it is that this is only £40,000 that's not to be included, would that be split through the apartments? Yes, it would become a service charge cost. It would be most likely borne to the leaseholders. There's obviously a discussion to be had by with the freeholder on this. They'll have the final sign-off and opinion on this, and they'll be key to making that decision. But I would suspect that it would become a service charge cost and included in the budget. And I think it's key. That's one area that we should actually expand on. One of the things that we've got to do is we're obviously looking at the anticipated expenditure from the end of this month for the next 12 months. So we are going to include our final costs into the next year's budget for Salle. It will be on its own line and its own schedule. And I want to stress this as loud as I can, that we won't be chasing that money. You'll see it on your account, and that's purely because what happens is we put it on your account in its own schedule. When the government make the payment to us, we then obviously credit that off, and it would leave a balance of any deduction they've made, such as the £40,000 or such as the state aid declaration, economic actors deduction. So when that does come out, please don't be too alarmed. Please don't think, oh my God, Liv have said that I've got to pay this. We're going to put a very strong cover letter on this. We're going to make it as clear as we possibly can. We've just got to include it in the budget because that's, it is anticipated expenditure. We've got to work that way. But it's nothing to be too alarmed about. The second stage of the Section 20 is still yet to be completed, and so forth. So, yeah. One question here is about how will it be for residents living on site? Will it be frustrating? Will it be loud? And so forth. So the honest answer is, until we get to the point that we know, till we're on site, I don't know how residents are going to react. And it's not going to be pretty. It's going to be a building site. We're doing everything we can to minimise that. We're working with the contractor. We're taking considerations into noise and what we can do to minimise that. We're working on delivery schedules to make sure that it's not at peak hours, and it's also not early in the morning or late at night, for example, where we're taking every consideration we can. We welcome any feedback on that. I understand a lot of people work from home these days, and that, having someone drilling into the wall while you're working from home isn't going to be ideal. And I fully get that. So I just want to stress that out. In terms of Schedule 9, what if the freeholder fails to sign? Is there a plan B? Well, ultimately, to progress the application, the freeholder will have to provide a Schedule 9 at some point. The freeholder is very much committed to getting this funded, and they are just reliant on their legal advice at the minute. As I've said, one of the questions I've asked is, what will actually, how long are you going to let these negotiations go on for before you progress? I haven't had an answer yet. It's something that I'm hoping to book a meeting in with the client and be able to sit down and thrash this out. As I say, it was only yesterday that I actually managed to speak to someone at the legal side for the freeholder to try and understand what these negotiations are actually entailing, which, to be honest with you, I don't fully understand it. It's high-level negotiations. It's not just the freeholder of Salle that's doing this. As I said, it's a group of freeholders that have appointed Erwin Mitchell, I believe, who are our solicitors, to progress this, progress those negotiations on the grant funding agreement. So it's complex, and I'm hoping that it won't take too long, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to progress that. When do we know exactly what costs will be approved? As stated, that's roughly around 4 weeks into after we've submitted. We know that's roughly when we'll get the time of what costs will be approved, and then after that we take away stated deductions and so forth. The next question, which I think at the minute is the only last question in the inbox for this second, is when we talk about this £40,000 deduction, is it per Mackenzie, Cartier or Salle for the hoardings, or is it just a share? No, each scheme's paying for its own hoardings. They actually come in roughly very similar. I think the actual amount when we talk about this 40,000, I think it was like 38,000 something. And then obviously site setup and operational costs that have been put on that to round it up to roughly around 40,000. Each of these projects are set up as their own. We're not making, while we're using the same suppliers, the same project team, and the same main contractor, because obviously them as individual firms see strength in numbers in that they've got 3 buildings next to each other that they can service. It's easier for them. They'll offer us a discount on their price based on that. It is very clear that each building is its own project. And for example, LaSalle, the freeholder may turn around on LaSalle and say, right, no, let's get this in. And we get this in on LaSalle, and we get moving, and LaSalle could start before, or another building that may happen on. So it's difficult to explain on that one, but yeah, each project is its own. Could we lose out on the funding if the freeholder delays and the 5 billion run out? Well, this is a question that I actually asked Homes England, and the standard response is the government have stated that any eligible system will be paid for by the government. There's extensions in place. The government are involved in these negotiations. Obviously, it's their team that are working with the solicitors team to complete these grant funding agreement negotiations and adjustments. So they're very well aware of how many schemes this affects. We've provided a letter to Homes England as well as to the freeholder explaining the risk that these negotiations continuing for a prolonged period of time are putting on the project, putting on the actual contractor walking away and so forth. We're confident at the minute they're not going to, but we have to obviously express our concern at that and be able to share it with the ministry so that they can hopefully speed things up, get this sorted, and then we're able to actually get this submitted into the into the fund and actually get started. Question here regarding when will work start, how long will they take? Apologies once again for my dog. The works will obviously start 8 weeks after we submit. We submit to the mobilisation will start 8 weeks after we submit. So my anticipation is that if we expect these negotiations to take a couple of weeks to complete, we'll then probably look at an 8 week period. Mobilisation probably take place sometime in December, and you would look to start in January with 52-week work on site, and then the close down at the end. So you're probably looking at Christmas next year before there's any starting to demobilise from site. But that's obviously based on when this gets submitted. If it gets submitted at the start of December, then obviously he's talking 8 weeks from that with a Christmas shutdown in the middle, and so forth. Once we have that timeline, we're going to share it. Once we know exactly when we've submitted and we're able to revise our timeline, put the dates in that we've already programmed, put that mobilisation, that procurement of materials, and all that sort of stuff in place, we're able to share it with you guys, and we definitely will be doing so. The question on the Working Watch. So as you all know, the Working Watch was installed. The Working Watch Relief Fund paid for a fire alarm at Leeds Dock for several of our schemes, LaSalle being one of them. That's now completed. The Working Watch has been stood down in terms of contributions from us. We're working with West Yorkshire Fire to satisfy them that we're able to respond appropriately. At the minute, while that goes on, there is one man that will be provided to be shared across the schemes, and we just need to work on that and finalise that evacuation management strategy. At the moment, we're obviously utilising site staff, so there's been no additional cost. However, we'll have to consider the appropriateness of continuing to do that. And it's something that I'm working very hard to get over the line, because we want this sorting out as soon as possible in terms of that. The good news is there's no waking watch costs being drilled up at the moment. That we're not part of that system anymore. We're still operating on site, as some of you will have seen, because some other buildings on the estate that we was working with are still using it at the moment. We so that's kind of your update on the waking watch. All the paperwork's been submitted. The fire alarm's obviously fully operational. And yeah, no, I think overall that was a successful install and operation. In terms of questions, I am trying to just flick through as many as I can. Will the waking watch fetch positive review on the builder's insurance? I spoke with the broker several times last week. I'm trying to provide him as much information, including potential timelines, when we expect to have the material off the building. I know this is a big thing for us on the Salle with the substantial increases that have come into place. The broker's impression at the time is that negotiations are continuing with the insurance company, but to be honest with you, it's not confirmed yet, but we're expecting the price to remain the same as it was the previous year, is what the broker explained to me. I'm trying to get some more information on that. I'm trying to get some background on that. And we're also working with our own broker to see if we can get the freeholder a better policy. There'll be a lot of information shared about that. And it is going to be one of the things that is holding the budget up at the minute, which means when we talked about issuing that budget for the end of this month, it's probably going to be slightly delayed, because it's key that we get the best, that we sort the insurance out, especially with the increase which is there, which is obviously affecting leaseholders. There'll be communication on that as it comes in time. As I say, I only got some form of actual confirmation from the broker last week, very much being involved in trying to progress something with that and move it forward. So I think we've covered quite a lot there, and it wasn't meant to be quite a large scale, full-blown session. We just wanted to be able to offer you guys the opportunity to ask questions live, give a bit of feedback. Any questions we've missed, we'll pick up. That email address, please feel free to email at any occasion. We've expanded our team at Live, so we've got another building safety officer that's joined us, and we're in the process of recruiting more, because we understand that communication hasn't been the best from myself and from our team, due to the requirements in various areas at various times. So that's one area that we're really committed to improving on. We want our leaseholders to know that we're with them on this journey. So please do email in. We'll get back to you, and we will answer any other questions in an update. I'm going to end the session now after 35 minutes, so I do appreciate all you guys joining us and for your time tonight. I hope the information has been useful somewhat, and give you a bit of background into the pricing and what we're looking at. And if there's anything else, please, like I said, do email in. Thanks for your time, guys.